Hi, I'm Jenny Sullivan. Welcome to this webinar as a part of the Fulbright application process on finding an overseas affiliation. Today I'm going to talk about what an affiliation is, what makes a good affiliation, the power of networking to get your affiliate commitment, and of course what should be in the formal letter from your overseas affiliate that you include in your application to Fulbright. At this point, it's really important for me to remind you that a letter of affiliation is only necessary for the students applying for our research/study award. ETA's English teaching applications do not need an affiliation, nor should they actively or as an extra seek out or find an affiliation on their own. That is inappropriate because you will be placed in a school ultimately. So this is just for students applying for the research/study Fulbright Awards. So what is an affiliation? An affiliation is a person or organization in your country who values your research and agrees to support you while on your fellowship. They are going to submit a formal letter of support for you and your project that's going to be included as a part of your application. The most common affiliations are with universities that have or a professor at a university who has a similar research focus and can really mentor you in your research project. They could also be a nonprofit organization, a library perhaps, or archival organization, maybe a laboratory or think tank, a museum, or a professional in your field. Maybe if you're in the arts, it's a world-renowned or expert in art or dance, something like that. For those of you applying for the master's degree or the study awards, you could potentially have two affiliation letters. Your most common affiliation letter is going to be your acceptance letter to the school or graduate program. It just says, we welcome them to this program. It's usually, unfortunately, however, this usually arrives after the Fulbright application deadline. In fact, a lot of the application deadlines for grad programs abroad aren't until December or January, but your Fulbright application is due in October. So unless they have a rolling deadline and you're able to apply very early, in most cases you won't have this letter by the time you submit your Fulbright application. This is the only part of a Fulbright application that the National Screening Committees and that Fulbright is willing to accept after the application. So if you get your acceptance letter after the Fulbright deadline, one of the first things we'll do is forward it on to Fulbright to be included with your application. In the meantime, because of this conundrum, what we might recommend and what we might think about doing is having you reach out to a faculty member at the university you're applying to, or a dean or the department chair, introducing yourself and learning a little bit about the program from them, expressing your interest in applying and your intention to apply, and seeing if they will write a letter for you to include in your Fulbright application. It might say something to the effect of, I've had many conversations with the student. They're very interested in this program we have. I've sort of reviewed their resume and their transcripts. I think they would be a good fit, even though our admissions process and final decisions won't be made in for a couple of months. I would really support this person in our program if they were to be accepted and win the Fulbright. So how do you start? Where do you start in getting your affiliation? The first thing you should do is look at the country summary for the country you're applying to see what each country's specific guidelines are for the affiliation. Each one might be a little bit different. Some might say that affiliation is not required by the time of application, although having an affiliation already in place and secured just makes your application and the feasibility of your project that much stronger. But they might say specifically in the country summary, one country might prefer might say that you have to affiliate with a university, for example, and don't have flexibility in other types of organizations, etc. That's why it's important to read those country summaries. The next thing to do is to think about what kind of support in country do you want and do you need? What kind of support does your project need? Are you looking for a mentor who's more hands-on or hands-off? What sort of equipment and facilities do you need, or access to resources do you need for your project? And what sort of language or other cultural restrictions or challenges might you face that you would need an affiliate to help you with or overcome? Another tip is to look at previous grantees in your country. Who were they affiliated with? This might introduce you to organizations or schools that are used to having Fulbrights, that know what the process is about, and that are supportive. It's really all about the networking. How do you find a person in country who's willing to get to know you and your project and support you for a year and then write your letter? The first thing to do is ask your professors and our mentors if they know of potential affiliates abroad. This is going to be the best way for you to find overseas connections and contacts. If you can, get a warm lead. If they're able to make an introduction for you, that's the best way to go about it. When the next step is sort of research organizations on your own, do some internet research and talk with your mentors and about organizations abroad who do or who are experienced in what it is you want to research or participate in. If you're reading a lot of articles in preparation for your essays, look at the contributors, to the authors to those articles, or the research they're continually quoting, the experts they're quoting for their overseas connections. Do a little sleuthing, and you might find a potential affiliate that way. Again, it's always best to get a warm lead, which is a connection through your network, where you might get an introduction. But as a last resort, just cold calling them up and asking if they would be interested. It has worked a number of times for many of our RIT Fulbright awardees. I'm often reminded that we need to go back to a little bit of the basics of networking if you're making a cold call. And so I want to touch on that really briefly. The first thing to do is send a brief email, or when in doubt, calling is always better. You should first state why you're calling or emailing. And if you can use a person's name as motivation for making that connection and why they should respond, that's a great thing. So if you could say, my professor so-and-so recommended that I contact you, that's going to be that's adding credibility. It's helping to make that argument for why they should respond and participate in this communication, and that can be very helpful. I'm calling you in particular because of your experience or expertise in this subject area. Then I'm applying for a Fulbright fellowship, and I would appreciate your advice or help with, and lay that out right away in the beginning. Ideally, you're not asking in that email or voicemail for that partnership and for that agreement for them to be your affiliate right then and there. But what you are asking for is something much easier to grant, which is 30 minutes of their time, either in person or on Skype, or over the phone, or over email if as a last resort, to talk a little bit more in detail about your research, what you're hoping to accomplish, what you can bring to them, what they could provide to you, and ask questions about the research they're doing, the expertise they have, and the resources they have access to. At this 30-minute in-person meeting, you might provide them with your resume or essays, your essays for your applications. You want to make sure you respect their time and have some questions prepared beforehand. So you might ask them always for another contact or another person to reach out to, or more references for potential affiliates or potential connections. Remember, these people become sort of champions for you and your experience and your need and your cause, and they can be great mentors and providers of advice for your career. So it's important that you build a long-term relationship with them over time. You update them on your application situation. You stay in touch with them. Again, always warm intros and leads are the best. In person or over phone is always better than email. Provide supplementary materials, as I mentioned, as your resume or your research proposal, and always send a thank you note when they're willing to connect you or give you some great advice or help make a connection. Remember that the culture might play a role in your relationship building. So each culture has different values around relationships, contracts, time, and tasks. So some cultures might be high context versus low context. Low context culture, it might be something like the U.S. or Germany, where it's, cut the small talk and get straight to business. We want to make decisions and move on to the next thing. Whereas a high context culture might need more time for you to develop a relationship with the person before you're really able to ask for that partnership and that research space and that commitment. Keep in mind different cultures' values around time, timeliness, adherence to deadlines. They might be inherently slower and more flexible, whereas we tend to be more. Time is very important. Time is very rigid. The deadlines are very rigid, so keep that in mind. And organization. Do some research about these and have knowledge about these things before you reach out to a connection or in another culture. It might help you in your relationship building and also in getting your ultimate commitment. So as I mentioned, once you've built that relationship and somebody has agreed to be your research mentor and affiliate overseas, they're going to write a formal letter on letterhead that they're going to send to you, and you actually upload it, or if it's already scanned, you scan it and upload it as a part of your application. A good letter will include things like, it'll be on letterhead, but it will also explain who they are and what they do and what their experience is. It's going to discuss their knowledge of your project and its goals and how it fits into their goals. And it's also going to provide details about how they might assist you and how they're going to support you. Are they going to connect you with the people you need to work with? Are they going to provide facilities or equipment, etc.? Some letter logistics. So you can have more than one letter of affiliation. You can have more than one affiliate. However, 5 letters that are weak are not, more letters aren't necessarily better than less. Each letter you should have and each affiliate you should have should serve a clear purpose for your research project. For example, I had a student a few years ago who won an award to go to Finland, and she was a photography student whose expertise was in taking images of and capturing the slow food movement. So she was taking images of traditional foraging practices and markets and community gardens and things like that. So she had 2 affiliates. One was at a university where she was working with a photography professor, an expert in photography, and she had access to computers and editing equipment and a mentor who could really oversee the technical aspects of her work and also provide venues and space for her to display her work and get feedback and critiques. And then on the other hand, she had an affiliation with a nonprofit organization that around slow food who could really connect her with the people she needed to photograph and the areas and the regions and the practices. Your letter must be on official organizational letterhead. It can be long or short. Most of them are about a page. I can provide examples if you need to see examples of past letters or provide those examples for your affiliates. You should probably provide instructions for your affiliate about what should be included in the letter, and Fulbright has a paragraph describing this. I would allow at least a month for the letter. I've never had a letter actually arrive in person in the mail. All the letters I've ever seen have been scanned and emailed to a student, and that's probably the quickest and most appropriate. But it does take time for your overseas affiliates to get the right letter from the right person, etc. The letter should probably be addressed to Dear Fulbright Selection Committee. And again, I said it should be sent to you, and you can upload it to your application. And it can be in another language as long as you have a translation of that letter on a second page of that scanned PDF that you upload. The affiliate doesn't have to translate that. You could hire someone or find someone with that native language here in the U.S. to translate that letter for you and then upload it. Some tips: don't push a person to write a letter that will only get you a mediocre letter, and you want to make sure you have strong commitments and partnerships. And start now. As I mentioned, it's summer and people are scattered and they could be hard to get a hold of, so it's really important that you start forming those connections and building those relationships and giving them time to send you your formal letter. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to Claire or myself.